kinda buzzed with a head full of drugs.
Looking at my Nixon, it's about that time to go and save the world from the daily grind. Speaking of which, I gotta hit the OC for a quick sesh with my skate park OGs. Oh please, this is still mid-city. Wanna check my street cred? Go ahead, come get me on the block like mopeds or the threads in your dickies, and I flow cold red off the head so swiftly. Stole the scribble show, bled, had the feds go get me. Still got head from your thoroughbred, no hickeys. Oh really? Throw a veil on your Philly. Took pictures of a crack like that bell out in Philly. Had to kick out my tail cause she smelled like Billy. Smoking blunts, left the breath so stale, couldn't kill me. Silly quick with it when I spit the shit, get it, I mean. Sit, kid it, I mean. Oh shit, it's amazing, I remember all the different shit I'm into. I try to stay focused on getting legal tender. Gotta stay on the grind cause if the legends get signed, gotta split that dough between 8, 7, 6, 5,
4 and 3 and 2 and 1. And when I'm on the mic, the women come down with A&T, Merce, and you're not. And I got more rhymes than California got cops.
9 in the morning, police at my door. Wonder what the fuck they wanna talk to me for. She said she wanted money for some fundraising shit. I slammed the door in her face and said, fuck you, bitch.
Looking at my Nixon, it's about that time for me to light another cigarette and settle my mind. Foot soldier, been waiting for the cookover. Probably won't be getting naked if she looks sober. I'm a primate with pimp-like mind state, raising the curve to make contemporaries irate. Still obsessed with your breasts and your fishnet, beating on my thin chest, screaming out Midwest. My nature is to make you a believer on your stereo receiver or your barely legal beaver. Buzzing overhead, spitting fly game. Nowadays, cats be getting paid and laid up off of my name. Wait a minute, take a number, made a visit to your village with this fresh-baked biscuit and stayed consistent. Breaking in the heads ain't as difficult when half of them are tripping over how they missed the boat. The key is control, but your flow is contrived. Keep it in my soul, take it with when I die. Plug that mic in and make heaven get live. Turn a groupie to an angel when she 8, 7, 6, 5,
4 and 3 and 2 and 1. And when I'm on the mic, all your homegirls come down with A&T, Slug, and you're not. And I got more rhymes than rappers who got shot.
Street Station.
the second page. I did the third page, or the middle page first, sorry. The first and the third page. I did the second page first because it's very different from the other 2 pages. It doesn't even have the same characters in it. So I wanted to establish, get that one out of the way because it was an odd page out, and then get into these 2 pages and work on them concurrently because I haven't really planned out these characters. So I'm going to have to draw each character each time throughout both pages to make sure that it looks consistent. Otherwise, I'll, spend a whole bunch of time on this frame and move to this frame, then move to this frame, and by the time I get back to up here, where this character reappears because he's really not too important, I might lose whatever look that I was going for with him, because that could take, hours. So what I'll do is I'm going to get these up to a relative level of pencils just on the characters first, and I'm going to draw each of the characters in each panel that they appear. And then we'll just go through that process. But of course, that'll be on the final pencil layer. First, I need to do a secondary pencil layer because these are just sketches. So we'll start with page 1.
Last time I wrote a song like this, I was drunk off the last words out of your lips, and what a world. You were always looking for attention. I was holding on to my abandonment obsession. In hindsight, I was just as ignorant as you were. Robbed by the humor, combined by the sutures, by the cool world, you had to be out. I caught you with another dude's in your mouth. Goddamn, little lady, how'd you get so cold? How'd life teach you all the little tricks you pulled on me?
So I got my pencil.
Act as if everything is all my fault. No sacrifice. I should have known that you were trouble from the start. Red dress laying on the floor in the dark. You were everything I wanted, nothing that I needed. My sexy little piece of shit demon. Leave. I used to say that I loved you. I used to act like a fool.
So this first pass of pencils is just going to kind of confirm all of my basic assumptions about proportion and form and figure and stuff like that. Because obviously, these figures are all just kind of sketched in here very, very loosely, and they might not have any real good proportion. In fact, I know they don't, as much as I tried. So these are just symbolic representations of what I hope the page to look like. I'm actually going to get in here and do probably drastically different things by the time I get done.
What a world. I was trying to pick up all the pieces. Even moved to Cali with you, living by the beach. It's egregious. Made a dude wanna find Jesus.
So the first thing that's going to really inform my overall perspective is this ground plane. So I do want to make sure I maintain that.
Cinderella got drunk and started spreading the thighs. The fairy tales over after telling me lies. Came a rock in the belly, they're the reason we fight. Yeah, I should have seen it from the jump. I should have shut.
And then we also have our
everything I want, but nothing that I dreamed of. My sexy little piece of shit cream puppy. Yeah, I used to say that I loved you.
this will be our barn in the distance. I don't want to get too much into that. I think that's actually pretty well placed. I'll leave that in pencil. But let's get these horses. So, horses. The figurette for horses is pretty basic for most of the body. Same for most other figurettes. So you've got the chest and the hip shapes. And then all the skin that moves between them. The legs, though, are a little more complicated. Excuse me. It's allergy season. Okay. It's like horses have these extra joints that are entirely underneath the skin and don't break away from the skin, but they still move separately from the skeleton, hinged at the shoulders and the hips, which are where you would expect them to be in the skeleton. So there's this extra joint here. And then they also walk on their toes. So no. I think that's right. Gotta confirm that on a couple of reference images I keep for horses.
Just when I thought this culture was open, they going down. Dumbing it down, spit ice, skip jewelry, more top cocktails on me like accessories. They can teach you how to front. I am really raw. I ain't seen a mirror in a month, but I stay fly.
This is actually happening much higher.
With the breeze, I'm a ceiling fan. I'ma get him. I can show you how to pump something heavy in the back. Marshall stacks.
No, I'm not sure. Hold on.
Windows down. I got the heat turned up on blast, wagging on the west bank, aiming in the style. Whoa, or catch me on a mission, pissing in some convertible, trying to create some tension. Over in a book discussing Christopher Hitchens or how to make bombs with shit you want in your kitchen. Listen, hey, my whole crew's on some shit, stuffing up your Nikes, spitting on your whip, kicking out your DJ, rock it, then we dip. We don't watch the replay.
And as before, as I talked about in the previous stream, it's helpful to draw a little floor box around your figures and the space you intend them to occupy. And that way you can make sure that, you know, like the foreleg and the hind leg should be landing roughly parallel to one another on the ground. And the same for each, for the left and the right. And this also can be taken upward in a 3D context to make sure that, you know, the feet and the shoulders are on the same line. And, you know, you can check the center of gravity of the figure and make sure that it's falling where it needs to. And this sort of constructed method of drawing makes sure that when you finally get to the layer of the final art, you've, you know, confirmed all of your assumptions and so you can be more confident of the verisimilitude of your work, which is important in a lot of styles. Not always.
We genuinely believe that all of this shit is fake.
But the style I'm going for here is.
Understand my whole crew's on some shit. Stuffing up your Nikes, spitting on your whip, kicking out your DJ, rock it, then we dip. We don't watch the replay. Hey, I ain't kidding. I was breaking my whole crew's on some shit. Stuffing up your Nikes, spitting on your whip, kicking out your DJ, rock it, then we dip. We don't watch the replay. Hey, I like tonight, let's make it terrible. Whole crew's on some shit. Stuffing up your Nikes, spitting on your whip, kicking out your DJ.
So let's do a little bit different with this horse. Maybe not. Okay, wait, I got an idea.
A city full of people, and my favorite is that waitress. And she treats me like some type of common patron. I see her every day. There's nothing to say unless I decide to step inside of that cafe. I only get to sit if I buy something to eat. Otherwise, it's best to keep my feet moving down that street. And goddamn, she's a hard bitch. She talks at me like I'm the bad dog that got into the garbage.
Nope, that ain't gonna work.
At the toilet is for customers. You ain't gotta tangle up the strings that make this puppet work. It doesn't have to be a game of patty cake, but it ain't like you don't know I sleep in that alleyway. And by the way, I can see it in your eyes. You're angry with your life, not a stranger to the fight. I bet you hate every man that you date, and you're probably addicted to all types of escape. You take it out on me that you're all alone when you know you got your own closet full of hollow bones. Watch the tone when you speak to old folks.
I'm gonna get the writer in here just so that I have a point of reference for that too, because I don't want to lose him as I start to hash this out. Because this is a kind of a weird twist of the body I'm doing here, but I'm trying to imagine, you know, the fact that horses turn by, you know, moving their head and letting the rest of the body follow along in that trajectory. So I want to show our other figure kind of trotting up over the crest of the hill and turning around and kind of finding an imperfect spot to have a conversation, because it's actually kind of hard, from what I understand, to get a horse to stop exactly where you want them to.
Ignoring the insults and evil eyes, I feed off of them. I wonder when she'll realize that she's the only reason I visit, the only woman in my world that acknowledges my existence. And if my shit ever comes, I miss it, because I'm getting old and I ain't got much love to give it. There it is, and I have to live with it. I had the chance to make a difference, but I didn't. In the cafe bathroom, drinking free tap water, thinking, damn, I should have been a better father to my daughter.
But okay, so I've foreshortened the oncoming horse considerably. And it's walking, so its legs are going to be, there we go. That's going to be hard to draw, I think.
So what you saying? I hear complaining. I could repeat every statement you made verbatim. I treated you better back in the day, and now you feeling like I'm changing, like I'm not the same man.
Quick glance at my references here, just to make sure I'm not screwing myself.
Frustration. You want some separation. You want no placement within this mess I'm making. I'm painfully aware of my mistakes, and maybe you should break and escape from the situation.
That'll work.
Or take a little taste of the blame, then instead you full of hate, telling me get out your face. Yeah, you don't really want me. You don't really want me to go. No, you don't. That's just for show. You don't really want me. You don't really want me to go. No, you don't. That's just for show. Now you wanna threaten me, is that what you're telling me? Like if I don't step it up, what, you gonna step from me? Where you gonna go? You next to me steadily. At this point, it's like I'm joined with your chemistry. Guess that it just wasn't.
Okay, so then
it's upsetting. See, I gave you the best of me.
the size of my figure up here is going to need to match, from a perspective basis, the size of my figure is down here. So I think I might need to actually decide where the horizon line is. Right behind this hill. Actually, I'll just shoot a bit here. Oops. So I think I'm going to have to actually throw up some perspective rulers here to be sure of how this all plans out. And this is 2-point perspective. So let's see.
No, you don't, that's just for show. You don't really want, you don't really want me. You don't really want, you don't really want me to go. No, you don't.
Well, that's actually handy. They put their horizon line almost right where I had my horizon line. In fact, why don't we just use that horizon line because it looks good. And it shows up on both sides of the horizon. Now, these perspective points, though, are way too close. So, I'll use my object selection tool and grab. And what I'll do is I'm going to try to find a line that already exists in my pencils or my sketch, and trust that you know, at that stage I was doing at least something right. So that'll keep at least one of my assumptions in line, and then everything else will have to line up with that. So then I need to take this guy here, and I can move the individual lines here. This doesn't change the ruling, but it does give me an idea of where any particular line on that perspective line would fall. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get the 2 perspective points to line up in such a way that all of my, or many of my assumptions in the sketching stage are preserved. They don't know what to tell me, they don't know who you are. I was listening to the wall when you met your monsters. Heard him break the closet door and take you away. Hoping you would change like the color of the moonlight bouncing off the rain. Wrong handle. I heard the devil in you that day. Watch the world around you cascade. Laughing like you would have fed your family to the serpent. Family to the serpent. You got something that the world won't talk about. They walk around it. It's deep sleep. So I think I want one of the vanishing points actually within view. So that I can get a little less drastic deviation over the course of this other horizon line, and that way I can force this out way out here to match this diminishing line that I had. Oh shoot. Let me try that again. I think that's going to be as close as I get. So now I've got, this will be the back line of my field, and maybe we can put this even closer. And so now this line actually, I don't know, that has to be over here. Alright, so now that I have these perspective rulers set up, I'll make sure I'm snapping to special ruler with my pencil. And then on this layer, I can draw some quick lines just so I know where I'm putting everything. And it should stick to the perspective ruler.
might catch me touching feet down on both sides. Ever since
Oh, so then we're doing posts in perspective.
People, I stand before you as a man with more true shit than he knows what to do with. I give it all to you long as you can promise me this. When it's time, you will follow
Oh man. Yeah, so a few of my figures are not going to be correct at all.
Fuck rapping, I sing off key. One thing you should never do is diss me, cause motherfucker, there ain't nothing rougher than trying to climb from the rock you get sun thunder. I can run through every one of your blunders.
There we go.
Mistake number one is that your crew don't love ya. I take a bullet for the core of the says. When me and my
So,
guys out touring the nation, I spit within
when you're working with perspective, and I'm going to rotate this around so it makes a little more sense to me for the way I'm doing this. Maybe there isn't a way. Oh, here we go. So, these lines right here are receding into perspective. Very subtly because the perspective point is so far, but in order to make sure that the distance between each of these furrows that I'm outlining in the ground is the same, because they would be, I need to do a little bit of fiddling. So the first thing that you do, and you can do this in either direction, but you set up a box. So you want your first box, or your first series of posts. And then you need to find the middle point, and it's helpful if you do this in a different color. So this will be my center line, and again, that's along the perspective. That looks about right. Let's try that one more time from down here. Maybe that looks better. So this is the middle line between the top and bottom, and then I need to go so in order to find the distance in perspective between this post and the next post, I start from the previous post, and I draw a straight line through where the center line crosses the preceding post. So there. So this way, now I know that a perspective line that I draw along this axis going into this vanishing point down here will be the same distance from the previous one in perspective. So because the perspective is changing so drastically, the closer you get to the vanishing point, you want to make sure that you are being faithful to what the perspective dictates. Otherwise it'll look weird. a series of still images in sequence. But obviously, with sound and animation, that barrier breaks pretty quickly.
So afraid of yours that you strayed from the course and you came up short. Believe you could have more credibility if he wasn't just another drunk pill junkie. It's obvious to me that he's still hungry for the superstars, a little bad lucky. Go ahead and get mad at God, point your fingers at your dad and Santa Claus. Listen, all of y'all, it's a sabotage. Wouldn't look so bad with the bandage on. It goes one for the dog, two for the shine.
So anyways, because this is establishing the location of the events and a lot of the context for the story, you have to make sure that it has enough detail to draw the viewer in and establish some expectations in the viewer's mind. Once those expectations are established, then in successive frames, I can give less love to the surroundings, within reason, of course, and focus more on the characters. And the viewer will remember this detailed establishing shot as they move through the successive panels and just kind of project that into their reading of the events. And this is whoa, what did I just do? Did I just tell you something important? Oh, huh. Okay. So yeah, so I want to make sure that the perspective is set so that way the image that the viewer has in their mind of this area is cohesive, and so that it carries through in their mind easily, because things that don't look right to our mind stick out, and that can be jarring, and then you start to recognize not the intended elements of the drawing, but the unintended elements of the drawing. It shifts focus away from what you're looking for. Okay, so now I've got these imaginary fence posts along each of the furrows, so I know where the furrows are going to be. So then on my second perspective point, I'll draw out those lines. And the more accurately I draw them now, the better I'll be off later, so take your time. Here we go. So now I've got my figure here that I've kind of boxed out in this furrow up front. I can now place that more cohesively, and then also know how the workers in successive furrows are plotted out as well.
She still wants a friendship. She can't live her life without me as a friend. I can't figure out why I give a damn to what she wants. I don't understand it now before the then. Most of this garbage I write that these people seem to like is about you and how I let you infect my life.
So here's our antagonist, I guess. It's hard to say. So I got that box laid out, and go ahead and grab the center of gravity there. So in order to do that, I want to go from corner to corner of this box. Oops. So now I know where the center of that box is. I can just draw that straight up. And so now I have to do some visual measuring here, because I already drew out these horses. So these horses are basically like my template for size on this perspective. So I just have to kind of imagine bringing that horse's box down here alongside my figure. And if the horse was walking right next to him, so I think actually I can use much of that. He's going to be shorter than I have him in my initial sketch.
Fuck you, Lucy, for not needing me. I wanna say fuck you, because I still love you. No, I'm not okay, and I don't know what to do.
Okay, so now we see the 3D perspective box that contains our figure there. I'm also going to erase some of these other lines because they're not necessary anymore. They're just kind of getting in my way. So let me clean this up real quick because I don't need my fence posts. I don't need my imaginary horse.
Well, I guess I'm a little pissed. Every action has a point. 5 points make a fist. You close them, you swing them. It hurts when it hits. And the truth can be a bitch. But if the boot fits, I got an idea. You see the tattoo that says warning. That's all, just a warning. So the potential victim can take a left and safe breath and avoid you sober and upset in the morning. I want to scream, fuck you, Lucy. But the problem is I love you, Lucy. So instead, I'ma finish my drink and have another while you think about how you used to be my lover. And everyone in this life would mistake it as love. Everyone in this life would mistake it as love. Everyone in this life would mistake it as love.
Okay, so...
And everyone in this life would mistake it as love. Everyone in this life would mistake it as love. Everyone in this life would mistake it as love.
So we've got a worker in every other furrow. And they're receding properly into perspective. Let's put this one over here. Then we only have to draw a pair of feet sticking out of the back of the panel. Always trying to save work. So, this guy's trajectory. I just want to make sure that...
Get real, they tell me. Only they knew how real this life really gets. They would stop acting like a silly bitch. They would respect the cock, whether or not they believed in it. Doesn't take much, and that's messed up. Because these people do a lot of simple shit to impress us.
So I didn't do much in the way of design for this building, or these buildings. But from page 3, I know I established some kind of house, some kind of barn, and a fence. So, and I got a little bit of detail on the barn here. So let's just go ahead and try to work that into this stuff here. So the front face of this cube is going to be vanishing towards this vanishing line.
trunk and get those hands.
Why am I so right?
Kings and queens, I was a jester. Treat me like a god, or they treat me like a leper. You see me move back and forth between both. I'm trying to find a balance. I'm trying to build a balance. Kings and queens, I was a jester. Treat me like a god, or they treat me like a leper. You see me move back and forth between both. I'm trying to find a balance. I'm trying to find a balance. I'm trying to build a balance. I'm trying to find a balance. I'm trying to build a balance. So now I keep a close eye on my pets, because they make most of their moves off of instinct and sense. It's eat, sleep, fuck, in self-defense. So straight, you can set your clocks and place bets. Wait, let's pray on the blind, deaf, dumb, dead. Hustle, maybe a couple will love what you said. MCs drag their feet across a big naked land. An empty bag of seed and a fake shake of hands. Yeah, I got some last words. Fuck all of y'all. Stop writing raps and go play volleyball. Gotta turning the world in a hurry, cause my attorney didn't put enough girls on the jury. Guilty of dropping these bombs in the city, but I'm innocent. Love is the motive, that's why I'm killing them. Guilty of setting my fire in all 50, but I'm innocent. Blame it on my equilibrium. In the days of kings and queens, I was a jester. Treat me like a god, or they treat me like a leper. You see me move back and forth between both. I'm trying to find a balance. I'm trying to build a balance. Days of kings and queens, I was a jester. Treat me like a god, or they treat me like a leper. You see me move back and forth between both. I'm trying to find a balance.
Oops.
I'm trying to find a balance. I'm trying to build a balance. I'm trying to find a balance. I'm trying to build a balance. I'm trying to find a balance. I'm trying to build a balance.
So then, let me get rid of some of these lines here and turn this another orangish color so I'm not getting confused. Get rid of some of this too. So the house face is actually vanishing towards this vanishing point way over here. So oh, I'm not locked to the. There we go. And then this face would be going towards our other vanishing point. That's all obscured by the hill. How does that house look? It's like a... Oh, sorry I missed your questions there, Minnie Houston. Let me see if I can get to them. Which tribes do I plan to include in this one? You know, I hadn't actually decided when I started drawing this, or I usually like sketch my ideas as soon as I have them, and then hold on to them until I'm ready to reapproach it. So I'm just picking this up after actually several months of it sitting on the shelf and germinating. And all I had done was the thumbnails. So the figures are probably going to be Naren because that's kind of the landscape that I've put in here. And then I do have quite a bit of work done on the second page. I'm up to an inkable stage where I could go ahead and fill in the inks. Yeah, I haven't done much other than really rough pencils for everything else. So I'm trying to hash out the tight pencils for this first panel, and then I'll carry those decisions forward into each of these panels and the third page. So yeah, no page is done. Is the scene from Monty Python where Arthur tells Peanuts why he is king? No, this is not that scene. So roughly what's happening here is this character right here, this is his first time being reborn. His soul has just arrived in a new body. And so his father is who knows about souls and has been reborn a couple of times, is basically mentoring this child, or not his child, but perhaps, you know, a sibling or a nephew or something like that, some other family member. Where they're like, okay, so this is your first time being reborn. This is new experience to you, but this is what makes you different from, you know, all of the peasants or the soulless workers. And of course, we'll get a little of NPC, or I mean, PC NPC snobbery and stuff like that, and also elitism from these aristocrats towards these commoners. And then down here at the bottom of the page, our figure recognizes somebody moving below. And this is the moment when two soulmates meet, and they recognize each other, and they know each other, and these are opposed soulmates. So this instant where they recognize each other, they both reimagine the final moment in which one slew the other. And so then we say, so we go through that, you know, that battle from a first-person perspective, thus the grills in the panels here, and then we come back here and we reconnect to the present in this panel where they're still sharing a stare, and then our boy quickly moves on, and the mentor and his mentee quickly discuss, you know, what just happened, and the sensation that he feels, and they say, okay, well, I mean, should we be concerned? Does this guy hold a serious grudge against you? And he says, well, no, it was only over a matter of horses. And then, you know, over that last panel, we see actually that our antagonist is running off with all the horses of the noble family. And so we get the idea of generation after generation of retribution and punishment for crimes from previous lives, and these two soulmates competing over time and stuff like that. And so that's kind of our punchline here, is that it wasn't really worth killing anybody over, but because they're opposed soulmates, it caused instant death. So, you know, there's, you know, I'm working game mechanics and different things into the story here to just kind of give a brief arc of some of those features as they affect the characters themselves in their lives. So hopefully that explains it.
So fast. In the pop shop got an offer. Packed up, moved out down to Colorado. Sunshine, clean air, not a lot of problems. And that's when I discovered Pogs and Tamagotchi. Time passed and the friends found punk, yeah. Or whatever, man. A lot of it was junk, but we loved it. Made us feel cool, little dumb kids. Running around just for fun, doing dumb shit. I was lighting on my candles at both ends. Roaring late, getting drunk with the friends. I was trying to stay positive, even though I was.
So now, looking at the size of the worker figures, actually, I think I'm going to have to increase the size of this figure here. Oops, I'm not in the right layer.
Slow down. You need to slow down. Every once in a while, sometimes you see how the world goes round. You need to slow down. Every once in a while.
So that didn't expand the way I wanted it to. I need to put the center of expansion for my selection down in the center of my floor box here if I want it to remain in the same place. And then I can Alt and Shift to make it expand from that center point. And that way my perspective line should be more or less right. But what I'm looking for here is I want this face to be similar in perspective and size to this face down here for this figure, because This figure is basically like, you know, down on his hands and knees. On his hands and knees here. So hand, knee, knee. So this figure should be roughly the same size. Maybe even a little bit bigger. And that, of course, means I'm going to have to increase the size of my horse people, but that's okay. We'll do that next. So, reselect. And let's just... Oh, and I need to move my center of selection again.
He moves the crowd like a cursor on Zoom. No curse words, doom. The worst church nerd first heard. Appears blurred to a million true believers. He is the super villain arm dealer to the divas. Cash amongst all the world's scandals. But a pearl handle to match the girl's sandals. Plan with half fly, pack a whole vandals. His flag with a black and gold patch with bloody anvils. Hit him to the head was the motto. And one more time to make sure the dead Blocko. When you throw blows in the night fight Blocko, it's how it goes in this modern life like Rocco.
I think that'll work, actually.
When it comes to flows, he got more than a mic full. Pull a broad like a dyke bull on a long thing. Messing with the wrong kids, my goal. It ain't Jack, son, for him to flip scripts like camera, action, villain, drawn by the laws of attraction for future generations' information. The black one, move the crowd like a Buddha cloud of purple, puff pass round the circle. The jerk well renowned for his work skill, he's out. The truth is the computer's down, Urkel. MC a show via Wi-Fi. Gave way before we wrap it up like Fly Guy. Hip hop sci-fi. You can see he had the eye of the tiger through the mask like the Fry Guy. Just made a baby home wreck. Don't check left some folks' ancestors home wreck. We're going back these lesser known facts toward evil. The guy for reason. Short people, no offense, the street was burnt grass. Whenever he walked on the street, he turned glass. On his lucky rat paw in the trap drawer. All the world that stays with the trap door, slack jaw. Logic to keep your mind in the project. Drop the check, his job is to drop that. That's just payback for those there's no sight though. What they don't know, like bone. Won't hurt till they squat. Got to be kidding me, not seriously plot. Put a hit out on the G-spot. Zip like you zip out their kettles in their teapot.
That's right.
We got to move these refrigerators. We got to move these color TVs. We on the move, step brothers. We moving it, and we move on trees. Young bottles of beer, I break all of them. Hard to choose one of these bitches, I take all of them. Before I pick up the dice, I shake all of them. Money like leaves on trees, I break all of them. Shooters in disguise, you probably mistake all of them. Put cookies on a sheet in the oven and bake all of them. Till the bottom is crispy. Great Gatsby reflector on the naughty dust, flashing like a strobe light. Royal Dynasty grad wrapping his dome tight. Locked in the middle of the crosses on my scope sight. I rap a bundle, know how to package the dope right. Rodeo, it can't even lasso the rope right. You hear the sound of a drum if the envelope's light. So when I come to pick up the paper, make sure the note's right. Handle the lever, tunes familiar like the man from Ipanema. Epidemic is spread from the epicenter. We got to move these refrigerators. We got to move these color TVs. We on the move, step brothers. We moving it, and we moving them trees. Never noticed how we welcome you. Invite you to sit. It's like the rich keep waiting to admire their shit. Watch, we ain't on the same page by now. It's never happening. Coding all these messages, it's only for the passengers. Coded for the massacre. When it occurs, I ain't condoning it. Best believe I'm owning them furs from when it pops off. Days wait, nights even longer. Popped off overstretched, trying to make it even stronger. After this, get the chips, part of the rest. Disrespect, part of my left. Gary Carter was part of the Mets. Part of the cardigan and called him the vet. Look, honorary is fake as fuck. Hidden in politics, drowned in hearsay. Said I'm on top of it. Said I'm a profit rich and watch the rest go. This ain't cutting the check. This is cutting soap, cutting the dough. We got to move these refrigerators. We got to move these colored TVs. We on the move, step brothers. We moving it, and we moving in trees. You better get those tears. They say the end is near. And I doubt that they were talking about this can of beer. Get on a purple motorcycle and ride. We still trying to party like it's 1999. Times out of 10, we're all looking at our fate like a date. And we hoping that she brought a friend. Lean on the same crutches like a new game plan. Ain't nothing to fuck with. Pass the judgment on the left-hand side. Splash in the blood like you'll never get dry. Run like the blood from a dead man's pride. Everybody bets with their life. And lately I feel like the meal got tasty. Trying to look at what the cook's putting in the gravy. I know I'm not crazy, I just got so much soul, the devil hates me. Sing a song, we will recite. Work so long to build your life, but it can feel so wrong to feel alright when the world might not live through the night. Sing a song, we will recite. Work so long to build your life, but it can feel so wrong to feel alright when the world might not live through the night. We're supposed to live in fear, otherwise mama might see you in some prison gear. Gotta be a model civilian and get your name printed on a bottle full of pills and spill your guts into a Dixie cup. Give no fucks, kiss no butts. So edgy, such a rebel. Low levy, another level. But everybody wants the same thing. We all want the same things. We all want to chase dreams. Celebrate trying to maintain with a little more time to appreciate this painting. Now pretend you're not alone and put your hands up in the air like a drone. Yeah, now hold them over your head like your home got invaded by the feds. Sing a song, we will recite. Work so long to build your life, but it can feel so wrong to feel alright when the world might not live through the night. Sing a song, we will recite. Work so long to build your life, but it can feel so wrong to feel alright when the world might not live through the night.
So, I'm thinking I might be shrinking my figures a little prematurely. I'm going to go back to my... Oh, I'm still on my perspective ruler. Well, I'll turn back on my perspective ruler. And I'm going to grab the top of his head here. And I'm going to try to bring that down. Whoops. Come on now.
Give me access. We gonna party till they bomb Minneapolis. And we'll admit that it's not that complex. Just a big popularity contest. Working with the same tools ever since grade school.
Yeah, so I am diminishing my figures a little quickly. Because if I... Yep. Alright, so let me get rid of those extra lines there. And I'm just going to grab my figures. That's a selection tool here. Once again, I move the center of the selection area to between their feet, so that way as I make them grow, they don't go crazy. He's bent over, so he's not going to be as tall as our figure in the back. So that looks much better.
when the world might not live through the night. What am I to do when all I really see is garbage? They are narcissistic and harmless, originally caustic. What I'm talking about is all these rappers on the margin. Claiming they got skill, I beg your motherfucking pardon. They need one margin, so I'm poor man start arson. Awesome, put a rapper body in our garden. I'm Martian, we on the same planet. I don't see anybody fucking with you, goddamn it. I've been hot since Michael J. Fox could talk. I'm a genius and use my contra lock. The last one who's underrated, who yet hasn't made it anyway, Mazel tov. Better than the midday fuck. They're my rapper, man, I think they suck. I'm gonna buy no big weight truck. Watch, I'm around the country with my fist taped up, yeah? I'm a puddle of piss, lower than not, at least I give 100%. Is it because I ain't covered in tattoos? Sit back, cupcake, I got bad news. You can't look me in the face. Tell me you're satisfied. Look me in the face. You can't look me in the face.
Okay, so I think I have all of the elements established that I need to. Just throw a couple of trees on the horizon and just before the horizon. But we're out on the plains, so there's not much in the way of
I can't kill 'em when they whack up a wheel. The niggas skills, you kill 'em in the rap. The feeling is through the ceiling when I'm willing through the trap. Till the music, I'm niggas with the feeling of the dance. A lot of these motherfuckers are crap.
Okay. So all that really remains is to get our figure down here. He's hunched over because he's under the weight of some buckets. So then, if that's across your shoulders, your elbows are back, shoulders are back, you're holding on to the, maybe like this. And that's probably an awkward place to hold anything. Alright, so shoulders way back, hands up.
I've been so close, come and think about it, I'm a ghost. Some people believe in Bibles, some believe in something that their eyes don't know. So I'm about to tell you how to psycho go.
And then I'm walking forward.
I'm gonna be one of the best they was. It's like the country walking over with million barrels of oil. They ain't even find me because of the ride. Find out prophets and ghosts that lives with a neck like that and a rope like this. Float like bricks. So when I'm ready to like
Close enough.
I kick till I broke like this. These days, rappers are show up the speed of the track.
Okay, so we've got our perspective worked out, and we can, I think that's the last, I won't need perspective again for any of these drawings, so good for that. Oh man, it's already 11:15. Time flies. Alright, so let's pop a new layer up here, and I'm going to draw out at least one of these figures before we're done. Ouch. Only 15 minutes left. Okay,
need distance, no days existent. My patience let me wait till the greatest love listen to me. I used to play the witness, wait in the trenches. It's like a 6-man six on different benches. It's hard squeezing life in a sentence. And if I do, roll carpet with the red tint. My entrance is what's between. When I exit, it's evidence left on the scene. Alchemists cut the record down to the bone, and with the record like this, I take the world by storm. It's God bless the land of the brave. Understand where I stand, my hand is made. From feet off, double located in the planet. Family landed, managed to raise the man that I became. Panic on my first campaign, but when the words fell in place, I was certain to reign. I did the purple and step in the circle and start flexing. Like the man invented, now storms change direction. Portions of my proceeds is feeding my homies now. I always shared pretty good for an only child. I was the baby boy, I could do no wrong. Now the roles reverse, I'm putting people on. They on welfare and got healthcare, and used to have their priorities elsewhere. I took rims and tires and traded them for a ticket to an island. It's where I wrote this rhyming, where I first saw my vision written. Driven by a better living and place to raise kids in. So I think like I rule the world. On the brink of something bigger, building schools for boys and girls. The thought alone gets me out of my bed. I said you got the tools, get them shits up out of the shed. Come on. Pass me a mic and roll down. Pass me a mic and roll down. I'm ready to sing around. The Jack MC, all my shit custom down, hold for it eventually. Money is made, fly blades, a woman with brains to help a black nigga reign. My lifestyle's a prowler.
So I feel like my center of gravity is a little off here. Might be this back leg.
Questions like, why you wear all that glass? Why would you splash me? Yo, it's only nigga shit. I'ma teach you like I was taught to. Hold a full wall, do seeing all kind of great fossils, colossal jewels. Big the house, act fly, I got you. Don't need the wall backwards, fuck up the taxes. My street credibility is stronger than Nancy's, yeah. Yo,
So let's see. Things to remember when you're working with limbs is that the femur and the shin are about the same length. So, wow.
I could be a John letter, so read him and weep. And the wolves smell blood, you can feed them the meat. But I'm a lion in the world.
You know what? I think it'll be easier. Let's do it this way.
Jesus, dying readers, I mean, holy shit. Christ on the cracker, that's just how we split communion. Had the wine make the sign of the cross, and I would live in the past, chalk it up as a loss. When police listen to my demo, to stretch limo, to the pen in the cell, watching Eminem on Jimmy Kimmel. But I can't go out like Kimbo, slice like Gina Carano. I'm a sideboard, terminate mano a mano. Still Ronald McDonald, over 1 billion served, but it's up to me to get what I deserve. So
And some other measurements that I need to confirm. The foot is about the same size as the forearm. So, let's make sure that those are the right length.
Fine. I don't need to talk to anybody, shit. If anything, they should wanna talk to me. Mad, bittersweet, so what else is new? It's just a feeling this too surpass that. So, hello, the villain is witnessing anything that important. I could either be mad,
Yeah, that's better.
in the head, tits and there's a sore spot. Demon putting my head on the cutting block. We either go round and round until we throw up. Most days suck. I'd like to thank you all for being sour, pussy scowling at me. I'm just trying to tell you my story, then take a bow. You sound crazy. Well, that shit sounds dismissive to me. You better deal with it, cousin, cause the wicked is a part of you, you know. The shadow to it, there goes the light. I'm gonna linger on this funny feeling until my eyes roll to the back of my skull. I never felt better yet. Everybody cries and I see. Everybody cries and I see. Everybody cries and I see. Everybody cries. Why drop more? I don't need no broccoli. Father, please get off. Why drop more? I don't need no broccoli. Father, please get off. Why drop more? I don't need no broccoli. Father, please get off. Why drop more? I don't need no broccoli. Father, please get off. Why drop more? I don't need no broccoli. Father, please get off. Why drop more? Everybody cries, and I sing. Everybody cries. Fuck your anger. Why are you so angry at me? Spitting warm saliva at me, drapes them out. Tick as tower, there ain't no love below. I mean, the lovely never shows. In any of your paintings, they still fuck with your heads like experiments. Putting me in AOC classes, cause I wasn't learning fast enough for you bastards. That's why they put all the broken shit. Smiling at children, let them know they're still a Santa Claus. Give yourselves a round of applause. I lock my doors from this hateful world I ignore. And I'm down and out, or I'm up in the clouds. I'm either here nor present, stay longer just for 2 seconds more. Shit, I hate being alone, stuck at home in another Great Depression. Shit, I guess I'll go outside and say hi to all the lovely. See all these small faces, faces don't run away from. Everybody cries and I see. Everybody cries and I see. Everybody cries and I see.
This is kind of a weird perspective to put on a figure. To make sure I don't make his head too big, though. So... Nope.
Camera thief, take pictures, run like the parallel stitches, attach my feet to the path I beat, teach myself to keep the answers brief, gnash my teeth like the last to feast, imagine me on that abandoned beach, sand and sea as if the jazz was free, I'm ice cream mixed with gasoline, direct attention to the craftsmanship, neglect to mention that the pastel stick like initials carved in the concrete, like the tattoo that hides on your mommy. I still kick it with angels. The difference is instead of the bar I'm at my kitchen table. The starlight shines through the glass, but you feel safe underneath that mask. Ferris wheel, give rides. The scars healed and time to get high. Lock the doors and hide the keys. Let's go describe how to climb a tree. Don't sign the lease, just cop a corner for you to curl up and try to sleep. Those cheap police won't find my wings. I keep my dreams inside my dreams. And if I had a time machine, I'd probably use it like a vacuum and try to clean. It kinda seems quite more than a handful of these regrets have been circumstantial. Now give me all the cash out the drawer. Touch that mustache down on the floor, and I'll be in court holding a pitchfork before I let the contest outlast the sport.
Oh, hello, Pondersome Morbus. Excuse me.
And keep it moving like a rumor. I don't need to defend my defensiveness. I keep to myself, my family, and friendships. I got enough people I could disappoint. If you disagree, I think you missed the point. Now go ahead and grab a chair. Let me tell you about the last few years. Pulled out a sack full of Samson's hair and put it on the dash like a dancing bear. I wrote you a horoscope. It won't fit on this post-it note, but if I had to sum it up into a shorter quote, it goes, fuck it, you might as well row that boat.
So what are we pondering today? Are you a plumber or just a handy person in general? Oh crap, that starts in 30 minutes. Alright. Well, I need to actually go. I have an appointment to keep, so I think I might have to, well, I know, I'm going to have to finish this later. But we got some good progress. We got the perspective down for the establishing panel, which is important, as we discussed, because that's going to, you know, set the tone and the expectations for the rest of the panels for this page. So we're doing good. We're gonna pick this up where we left off tomorrow. I'm probably do some more work on this tonight. Whether or not I stream it or not, we'll see. I did do a stream last night, and that was nice to get a couple of people who don't normally get in here to watch. But if you enjoyed watching the stream, please let me know by coming back and chatting with me, and maybe throw a few bits my way if you've got some lying around. And I'll catch you tomorrow. Take care.
Money ain't a motherfucking bribe. It's a sport I invented to win when I watch.
Lights and the locks, even on all the ice and the Sprite you just drop. Get money.
Money of your motherfucking life.
2-ton angel carved out of ice. Alligator sailboat, $sign eyes. Fill a warehouse full of Van Goghs twice. Get money.
Money or your motherfucking heart. I could give it to my dog, he makes money when he barks. So put it in my fridge or in one of my parks that I bought so my robots could learn how to larp. Get money. Money, 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 money.